Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Ginny Baro, and today we are continuing our conversation around some of the factors that our talented, high-performing, high-achieving female leaders who joined us for the masterclass in November shared with us about how to bet on yourself and grow and advance in your career without burning out. When I asked the group the question, how do you bet on yourself? These are the key points, the key elements that they shared is how they bet on themselves. And today we're going to cover the fourth factor. The first three were invest in yourself, show up, believe in yourself. And this one today is about trust. Trusting yourself. It's very close to believing in yourself, but trust has this element that you have a belief that no matter what happens, things are going to work out. Now, I know that depending on the type of life you've had, the type of career that you've had, the kinds of people that you've run into in your life, those who probably supported you and those who maybe stabbed you in the back, at least that's how it felt, that trust could be a very tricky word, a very tricky energy, and a very elusive component in our lives if we've had situations and reasons not to trust. So I'm not going to go into the personal aspect because that could be a rabbit hole that we go into as to why you may not be able to trust others or trust yourself. So we're going to stick with the career aspect of trust. Trusting in your career, what does that look like? I know you have a manager, most likely, unless you're running your own company. You have peers and colleagues. You have your team. You have people around the organization, other senior leaders who have something to do with your function. And when you walk around with a sense that you can trust people, I want to ask you, how do you typically show up when you feel you can trust people around you? And the easiest way to get into that headspace is to think of a time when you felt that trust had been violated at work. And how do you show up in those cases? If it happens to be with our manager who maybe took credit for something that we did, that seems to violate the trust because there's no alignment between the truth and what the manager did, the behavior. And so there seems to be a reason to recoil and say, ooh, I can't trust Ginny because she is taking credit for my work. And so as a manager, I want to help you explore, how are you being trustworthy with your team members so that there is a level of trust that allows you to influence, lead, and guide them in a productive way, and one that takes into account the best interest of the team, the organization, the company, while also taking care of the individual. And so how are you currently engendering trust within your team so they feel that they can trust you? How are you behaving toward your team that are trustworthy behaviors? I want you to start thinking about that. And it's really important because when we raise our self-awareness around, and we talked about this, how am I showing up for my team? Am I going to bat for them? Am I guiding them and instructing them? Am I communicating clearly what is the expectation, what is the vision, where we're going? Or am I holding back? Am I only giving them drips of information as needed because I want to be the one who has the big picture in mind? How are you helping and supporting your team to do the best they can in their roles? One of the studies that was published in the Harvard Business Review talks about how setting a vision and the strategy with purpose can lead to so many positive outcomes. Because when people know where they're going. They know the reason why they do what they're doing and how what they do fits into the big picture. They find more meaning in their work and perform at their best. So if you're the kind of leader who holds back on information, who holds back on sharing that vision, how is your team performing? And are they performing the way they're performing because they're high performers, or are they performing out of fear of losing their jobs? There is a big difference between the two. Performance is not the same, meaning if your team is performing at a high level from a place of fear and of not losing their job, that performance leads to a lot of drain. And also, the minute that they can find another opportunity to move to a different place they don't feel this way, they will take that opportunity. If you're looking to retain talent, which is such a valued resource these days, looking at yourself as a leader and how you're showing up for your team, how you're engendering and developing trust with them, and how you are sharing the vision and giving them the tools and the strategy that supports them in doing the best job possible, that's going to help you as a leader to retain those valued resources that cost you so much to train and develop over time. And if you have a new team, you know how hard it is to find the right qualified, right attitude, right fit people. And so this is really important for us as leaders. So that's where I'm taking this as it relates to trust. So how are you trusting your team, and how are you actually trusting your leadership? That's another group that's really important. When you don't feel that your leadership is being transparent with you, that they're holding back. I understand that there's times when you can't share everything because of confidentiality, because of a transaction that's happening in the background that no one knows about yet, and there's some legal issues and legal components that must be addressed. I get that. And if you notice that your team, your leadership team, your senior leaders are not trustworthy, I would bring to your attention, what is your role in connecting with other senior leaders who you trust, and bring up the fact that in your role, there are several situations where you feel that trust can be improved. Notice you're not complaining, you're looking for a constructive way forward. And the person who you entrust with this conversation can help guide you around how to perhaps have an empowering and difficult but empowering conversation with some of the senior leaders who you care about, because you know that when things are going wrong and people are not happy, typically it starts at the leadership. And so if you are a leader who's conscious, who's connected to your people, and you notice that how the senior leadership is behaving is impacting and influencing the teams, as a leader, it behooves us to have the courage to have those types of conversations with senior leadership, to have the types of conversations with a mentor, with a sponsor, and get guidance from them as to how to best approach the situation, and have a follow-up conversation with the senior leaders that are expressing and exuding these behaviors. Because if you step to the side and let it all happen, then you become part of the problem. So I'm not suggesting that you jeopardize your job and that you throw yourself out there and talk to senior managers in a group. This is a very strategic, very generous way to contribute to your leadership team by having private conversations regarding how certain behaviors are impacting the team and the morale of the team, or what the team sees as the future vision for themselves, which could be confusing. It could be putting them into a place of uncertainty, which is not what we want to do. Even when we don't know the answers, we can still communicate what we know and let our people know that as soon as we find out more information, we will let them know. Even that engenders trust, because your teams then see that senior leadership is not being coy and trying to pull the wool over their eyes. So that's another group of people, the senior leadership. How is the trust and how are you trusting them as it relates to your day to day? Then there is the question of trusting yourself. How do you trust yourself to make the right decisions at work, to seek out support when you need it, to ask for help as required? Trusting yourself is so important to betting on yourself because it implies that you have a growth mindset. And when you trust yourself, you are willing to make a mistake, knowing that you're coming from a good place with good intentions. And if you make a mistake, that you can always learn from that mistake, you can recover, and that you are in an environment where making mistakes does not mean that you're out the door. And that brings up, again, your role as a leader. Are you the kind of leader who is open to people trying things out? Do you trust them to be innovative, knowing that there's a chance that if things fail, there is going to be a consequence? So how do you guide, mentor, and coach your teams to be innovative, to be thoughtful, knowing that there could be a mistake? And how do you react or respond when the mistake happens? Because that's going to determine whether they're going to continue to take risks and to innovate, or whether they're going to shrink and stop the innovation altogether. Very important for you to start seeing yourself through almost a mirror as someone else in your team sees you and how your leadership sees you. If you notice that you're not growing and advancing in your role, looking at this from the lens of trust, how much are you trusting yourself to move forward with your ideas? How much are you empowering your team and trusting them that they know what they're doing and that you believe in them? And how are you trusting your management? And if there's any issue around trust, the constructive question I have for you is, what are you going to do about it? And if you need support, because sometimes it's so hard to look at ourselves, it's much easier to see someone else and be able to help and support them and coach and mentor them than it is to see what is happening with ourselves. So if that is you, where you can notice things in other people, but when it comes to yourself, you're like, I'm not sure what the problem is, then reach out and I would love to support you. I would love to connect with you over a 45-minute strategy session and see how I can support you. The worst thing that can happen is that you will have more clarity. You will potentially have a clear roadmap of what to do next. And if you need additional support, we can talk about what it would look like to work with me on a VIP coaching level or to join one of my programs, depending on what the situation may be. So if that's appealing to you, you can reach me at callwithginny.com. I can't wait to continue to share the rest of the golden nuggets from our talented female leaders who attended our masterclass. Have a great rest of your day. Live with purpose, live with joy.